What is going on, everybody? My name is Kneeckoh and welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet VGC guide video. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that has been kind of requested recently on the channel. People have been mentioning in the comments on a lot of my VGC battle videos how they are interested in my team building approach because I'm building a lot of teams in Regulation E and I've been showcasing them. People are curious as to how I approach team building with my off-meta picks. I've been using a lot of goofy stuff, like there's a Trevenant team that's up, there's Ludicolo, there's Infernape, you know, there's a lot of Pokemon that traditionally aren't very good in VGC that are being showcased here, and I wanted to briefly go over how I go about team building with all of these particular Pokemon and my thought process when I go into it. Now, this video will also cover some just general tips and tricks for team building that will help you even if you're not building with off-meta Pokemon, so I think it's valuable for people that are even trying to build normal, more meta oriented teams. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If you guys enjoy the video at any point, be sure to leave a like and sub, but let's talk about this. So I think the big thing as far as team building goes is coming up with an idea. That's an excellent place to start. Just have an idea of what you want to do for a particular Pokemon. So previously I had like a whole list. There's still some Pokemon sitting here that I wanted to team build with. I literally went through, made a bunch of teams and put one Pokemon in each of those teams, and that was the Pokemon that I really wanted to focus on. I had originally Slacking, I had Komo-o, I had Shiftry, which is obviously still unbuilt. I had Ludicolo, I had Trevenant, I had Munkidori, I had Infernape. So there's just a list. Just pick a Pokemon and just go with it. That's what you want to team build with, and that's where you'll start your endeavors. So after you go ahead and pick whatever Pokemon you're thinking about team building with, you kind of have to take a look at the Pokemon. You can build with almost any Pokemon in the game and have some level of success with that Pokemon, but you need to understand what that Pokemon does and how that Pokemon does it differently or better than another Pokemon that fills that same role, right? So looking at something like Shiftry automatically, Shiftry got Wind Rider, which is really positive in the current metagame. You know, we've been seeing a lot of Bramblegast in the format that are really solid for Wind Rider sets, right? So let's bring up Bramblegast, another Pokemon that does this very well and has filled this role. Looking at the stats, Shiftry and Bramblegast are very similar as far as their stat distribution goes, right? They're big physical attackers with decent speed, and that's pretty much the extent of the Pokemon. They're very frail otherwise, but they could do big damage because of the Wind Rider ability. So if Tailwind is up, you are going to have an additional attack bonus, plus you have immunity to wind moves, so things like Icy Wind, Heat Wave, things of that nature, you are going to be able to just ignore, which is really good looking at a lot of Pokemon in the format. Iron Bundle is making a return, Heatran's making a return, things like that. So I look at this and I go, okay, what does Shiftry do better than Bramblegast? How does it fill that role better? Well, first and foremost, you know, a lot of teams like running Fluttermane, right? So Fluttermane is a ghost type. Having two ghost types on a team can sometimes be an issue, right? You don't want to have the same weakness across multiple Pokemon, so that could potentially be a problem. Whereas Shiftry is a Grass Dark Pokemon, allowing you to, you know, rotate into certain attacks or have Fluttermane rotate into attacks. For example, if you're against an Iron Hands, you can rotate the Fluttermane into take a Drain Punch that the Shiftry would otherwise not enjoy, versus Iron Hands is never going to Drain Punch into this particular Pokemon, allowing you to, you know, have that kind of maneuverability on your team if you were to run Shiftry over Bramblegast. So very interesting kind of idea to tackle at the start is figure out what the strength is of a Pokemon over another. Shiftry also has a very deep move pool versus Bramblegast does not. Bramblegast is quite limited as far as what it can use and what it can actually benefit from in VGC, versus Shiftry has a lot of options, right? We have access to Stab Knockoff, we have Sucker Punch, we have Fake Out. I believe, I want to double check it, we do have Fake Out, right? So there's a lot of things that Shiftry can just do that Bramblegast can't, right? So that's going to benefit it very heavily, is just being able to have that deeper move pool, have more coverage options than something like Bramblegast. So that's kind of the thought process you can have. So I kind of want to pivot and talk about a different Pokemon that I already built a team for and kind of think about how I built this particular team, right? So I wanted to build a Trevenant team. Trevenant's one of my favorite ghost type Pokemon. I'm a big ghost type Pokemon fan. So I was like, Trevenant is a Pokemon I need to build around, right? I want to have a Trevenant team because it's just a fun Pokemon. So I was looking at Trevenant and seeing what Trevenant can do, right? Trevenant generally is a very slow Pokemon, has decent bulk, not a ton of bulk, and a fairly decent attack stat. So I was like, okay, what else does Trevenant have access to? So I looked at its abilities and I saw it had Harvest. Harvest is a really interesting ability because if you have a berry and you've already used it, there's a 50% chance that you can regenerate that berry at the end of the turn. But if you're in the sun, you are able to automatically get that berry back at the end of the turn, allowing Trevenant to just kind of sit in front of stuff and eat. And I think this is a really fun kind of method of playing Trevenant. It can be a very annoying Pokemon, especially because it has access to Horn Leech. Horn Leech allows it to recover health in a battle based on the amount of damage done. You do 50% recovery for the damage that you do. Very strong, considering under the sun, you are constantly going to be regenerating that berry and be able to get your health back. Makes it for a very annoying Pokemon. So with all this information, I thought to myself, what does this do? What does this do on a team? Obviously, I'm going to run a berry on this, and I'm going to try and focus on getting that berry back and making this just an absolutely annoying Pokemon. So I looked at what else this had access to, and it gets access to Will-O-Wisp, a very solid move in VGC because you are going to lower the amount of physical damage a Pokemon could do. Looking at things like Iron Hands, Urshifu, things of that nature, you're going to be able to manage very effectively with a Will-O-Wisp on them. So I was like, okay, Will-O-Wisp is fantastic. This isn't mainly going to be my big sweeper Pokemon, so having something that can slow down the other physical attackers and let the rest of my team eat is going to be very beneficial. Also, I have access to Shadow Claw. I have a decent attack stat, so playing a Shadow Claw Horn Leech set into something like a Flutter Mane is very beneficial because Flutter Mane is still very prevalent. It's going to allow me to hit that Ghost type very effectively and hit it hard because Flutter Mane is not very defensive. So I was like, okay, I have a set and I'm slow, so why not run this on a Trick Room team? And because I want sun access, I want to be able to get that berry back. What's the first thing that comes to mind as far as a Trick Room sun setter goes? Obviously, we landed on Torkoal. And this is kind of the process of how I start my team building. I figure out what the Pokemon does that I want to focus the team build around, and then I progressively increase the number of Pokemon on the team. So I'm like, okay, we have Torkoal. This is awesome. What else do I want? Then I think, okay, I have Trevenant, but Trevenant isn't something I necessarily want to have out on the field immediately, right? It's a Pokemon that I want to wait for the sun to get up so that way it maximizes the bonuses that that Pokemon provides for the team. So I need another Trick Room setter. And I think to myself, what other Trick Room setter is super beneficial for this particular team? I think, oh, maybe Cresselia, maybe, you know, a couple other things. Indeedee could be an option, right? But I ended up landing on Farigiraf, right? And Farigiraf is really solid because of its ability Armor Tail. It allows me to mitigate any sort of priority moves. Looking at a lot of Rillabooms running around with Grassy Glide, it allows you to stop fake outs, things of that nature. Aqua Jets from Urshifu, really solid Pokemon in the meta right now. So I landed on Farigiraf, and okay, I got my 2 Trick Room setters for this Trick Room team. What else benefits from Trick Room? Well, we just got access to another really solid Pokemon in the form of Blood Moon Ursaluna. So I land on this. I'm like, okay, Blood Moon fits on this team super nicely, but what else can I add to the team that really is going to give me an edge under Trick Room? Obviously, we're going hard Trick Room with 2 Trick Room setters, and we have Torkoal. We want to focus on what we could benefit from additionally with these last 2 slots with this Trick Room setup. So I think to myself, what else works great under Trick Room? What's going to allow me to, you know, absorb some hits here and there? I think immediately Iron Hands. I go, oh, okay, we got Iron Hands now. We've got Farigiraf. We can do that as a potential lead and be able to Volt Switch Iron Hands out. Immediately, that's where my brain goes, so I add that move onto the team. I notice with the rest of these Pokemon, I've not touched their moves or their EV spread. That's not where I'm at. The only Pokemon other than Trevenant that I have a move on is Iron Hands, because I immediately think I can set up Trick Room and Volt Switch the same turn if I don't need to fake out, and I can Volt Switch right into Torkoal, and I'm able to then get Torkoal out in the sun and be able to do massive damage with Torkoal. So that's kind of where my brain is right now, and I need one more Pokemon. I'm thinking to myself, what else will work on this particular team? So I'm thinking about what's popular in the meta, and a great tool to use is Pikalytics. Pikalytics is a fantastic tool because it shows you everything that's very popular in the meta, as well as teammates that work very well with that said Pokemon, right? So I can scroll through the list and I say, oh, Flutter Mane's really high usage, Iron Hands is really high usage, Lando, you know, oh, Lando's big, that's crazy. Looking around, Arcanine's very big. Oh, okay, there's a lot of Intimidate going around, and I keep scrolling, and I look, where is it? It was higher up on the list the other day, but I don't know where it disappeared to. However, the Pokemon I ended up landing on for this particular team was Empoleon. Now, you might be wondering, why are you running a water type in the sun? Why are you running a water type in the sun? Well, I don't always want to play in the sun. Sometimes that'll benefit my team, my opponent, too much if I access sun on their setup, right? Say they're running like a Hearthflame Ogerpon, right? And they're able to counter my Trick Room. Maybe I don't want to bring a a Sunsetter to benefit the opposing team. So I need something that can help balance that out. So we landed on Empoleon, and I brought Empoleon to the team because Empoleon got access to competitive. It's going to benefit from those Arcanines running around. It plays very nicely into Arcanine. It also plays very nicely into Landorus, which is also running around and doing stuff. And then there's other Pokemon that are dropping stats, looking at things like Bundle, other moves that are just popular, like Moonblast can lower the special attack, which is going to allow you to be able to get the competitive bonus. So there's a lot of things that Empoleon just benefits from in the format right now, making it a solid bring. So maybe I opt out of bringing Torkoal in this particular matchup, and I bring, you know, Farigiraf, Iron Hands, Ursaluna, and Empoleon, right? Maybe that's my particular setup that game. Or maybe I bring Trevenant in the back with Empoleon or something to that effect. So now I have the team. I know it's a Trick Room team. I know I'm here to do lots of damage under the Trick Room. So that's where my brain is at. So then I start piecing together the rest of the sets, right? So Torkoal, obviously, I go with Charcoal. You could go Choice Specs on this particular Pokemon, and you set Drought. You want to be able to just kind of be crazy, crazy strong with your fire type attacks, right? So I do this right here. I give it a modest nature, and then we go into the moves. Obviously, Eruption is just incredibly solid. I want Flamethrower here to be able to do big damage, single target damage. I run Earth Power, and I have Protect to be able to avoid some shenanigans. Maybe if I decided to lead Torkoal, I can Protect turn 1 and just be able to sit in front of stuff. So Torkoal, really solid. We got the set. We know what we're doing with this particular Pokemon. Next up, we move to Farigiraf, and we go, okay, what does Farigiraf do for the team? Well, we have access to Psychic, and it's a really strong Psychic user because it has decent special attack stats, right? Psychic's really good right now. There's Iron Hands, there's Urshifu, there's a lot of stuff that gets hit super effectively by those Psychic attacks. So Psychic's really solid. Obviously, we're going to want to have access to Trick Room because this is our additional Trick Room setter. This is really fun. And then we have a couple other options for this Pokemon, right? So we have Psychic and we have Trick Room. We got to think, what else can this do? Helping Hand is great on Farigiraf. Helping Hand is so nice because this isn't going to do a ton of damage to everything. So having that ability to boost the Pokemon standing next to it is incredibly solid. So I really like Helping Hand. Finally, we're down to the last move, and I got to think, what do I like on this particular Pokemon? Do I want to run Protect, or do I want to be cheeky, maybe do like an Ally Switch, right? So I can decide between the two, land on a move, and then go from there. So I'm going to give it the Rocky Helm, and I'm going to give it a Terra that benefits it. I'm going to go with Terra Fairy, obviously, so I don't get knocked out by whatever, right? I could also give this Mental Herb if I decided I needed it, something to that effect. Then we move on to Blood Moon. Blood Moon does big damage. Let's do this. Let's throw like 204 and this. And then we'll give it a Modest Nature, give it the Throat Spray, and then we'll go for Terra Normal, wherever that is, to maximize our damage. We give it Hyper Voice, we give it Blood Moon, we give it Earth Power, and we'll give it Protect. There we go. We have our set. Now, as far as EV spreads go for a particular Pokemon, you can tweak these as you go, as you play with Pokemon to decide what you need. What I normally do is find a set that I like on one Pokemon and just transfer it to that Pokemon, right? I find a set that works really well and I move it. The only time I run damage calcs as far as team building goes is if I'm playing in an actual tournament and I need to know what that Pokemon is taking hits for, right? If I'm playing on the ladder, I'm not as worried about it. So I'm just going to go and be like, oh, for Farigiraf, I used it on this team. It is the original Trevenant team. And then I go, okay, here we go. And I did end up actually landing on Mental Herb for this Pokemon to avoid any taunts from things like Tornadus, things of that nature. Obviously, Tornadus isn't the big one because I have Armor Tail, so Prankster Taunt won't work, but you get the point. Taunt is going to be a problem, so I want Mental Herb. Moving on, we have Iron Hands. Fake Out is big. Let's throw the standard Iron Hand stuff on this guy and Drain Punch, right? Then we give it an Assault Vest to boost it, and then we think, what do I need as far as Terra typing goes? Grass could be beneficial, but I don't think it's as beneficial as it once was. I think Fire is definitely better because of Ogerpons running around, so I can use Fire to avoid the damage from an Ogerpon, put me in a really strong position. So there we go. We have this Pokemon down, and finally we end up on our Empoleon. What do I want to run on Empoleon? Well, Empoleon really is a bulky Pokemon. I really like having the extra bulk for this particular Pokemon. As far as a Terra type goes, I like Terra Fairy a lot. It hits for neutral for your grass type stuff, and then it also avoids the Iron Hands issues that you have with like Drain Punch into this Pokemon. So I do like Terra Fairy a fair bit for this. I run Water Pledge for that consistent damage. I have Flash Cannon to handle things like Flutter Mane and that, and then Ice Beam for those Landos that are running around. And then I can run Roost, or I can run Protect. And now we have a team. We have a team. right? That's my general strategy for building the team. I figure out what I want to build around, and then I go, okay, what works for this Pokemon? How do I benefit it and maximize its potential? Obviously, Torkoal is going to allow that Harvest to continue going off, and then the rest of the team just kind of rounds out what the general idea is. These two Pokemon are very slow, so Trick Room just works, so we ran with Hard Trick Room. And as I go, again, I like to get the team made and then add the moves to cover what I'm weak to, what I still need access to deal with, right? So that's why you saw me add all of these Pokemon. Only Pokemon that got a move was Iron Hands, and then we kind of went from there. So that is the general concept of how I team build. I figure out what I want to build around, and then I look for other stuff that is going to benefit. Now, a lot of people, when they're building with these off-meta Pokemon, they like to build with some goofy stuff that, like, maybe isn't as popular. I find the best way to build with off-meta Pokemon is pick one, maybe two off-meta Pokemon, and then build with other more common meta Pokemon, because that is going to give you the best benefit for allowing those Pokemon to do what they do. If you have too many off-meta Pokemon, you start to get overpowered. You get power crept, essentially. You need those other more meta-defined Pokemon to cover your bases, to allow the Pokemon that is not as popular to do more for your team. That's my general strategy, okay? So that is pretty much it for this video. I hope this makes sense as far as team building goes with any of these off-meta Pokemon. I will say there are instances where there are just Pokemon that don't do as much as they should. It makes it very difficult to build around. One that I was trying to build around that is a perfect example of this is Noctowl. Because if you're building with an off-meta Pokemon, you want that Pokemon to be able to fill a role better than or differently than another Pokemon that could do the exact same thing, right? So Noctowl has access to like Tailwind and stuff, but it just isn't that great defensively, and it's not that great as an attacker. So this just doesn't have a whole lot of moves in Scarlet and Violet that will make this a super powerful Pokemon that can fill that role of a Tailwind setter or whatever better than something else. So I have a lot of difficulty with this particular Pokemon, and you'll find that as you're building is if that Pokemon just doesn't fill a role better than something else, if you can look at that Pokemon and go, I would just rather have this there, then it's probably not the best Pokemon to be trying to build around. And that's just kind of how I go about my team building strategies. So hopefully this was helpful and gives you an idea of how to build with literally any off-meta Pokemon. I'm sure there's a way to build with Noctowl. It's just a Pokemon that I really struggled with and is an example of something that maybe isn't something you should immediately jump the gun with. Try to find something else a little more practical that has a more normal niche to fill, and that can really benefit the team. So that is going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a like and sub for more videos like this in the future. Also be sure to leave a comment and let me know, what do you prefer team building with? Do you like doing more meta stuff or more off meta stuff? Me, I like going both ways. If I'm playing in a tournament, I try to build a little more meta defined, but if I'm playing for laddering and playing for videos, I want to use those goofy fun off meta stuff. Also, check out the Discord. People over there hanging out, playing Pokemon all the time. If you want to see anything else from me, check out any of the videos that you see here on screen. But until next time, peace.